Hello and welcome to the Hennepin County Developmental Disabilities Waiver Overview Training. My name is Jerry Mellum. I'm a senior planning analyst. I'm involved in a lot of aspects in Hennepin County, including training in many topics on county services. The Developmental Disabilities Waiver is unique because the focus is habilitation, teaching, training, educating, mentoring, challenging the person to be as independent as possible. There are 4 services in the Developmental Disabilities Waiver that are, by definition, habilitative. You have to have at least one of these services. One is supported living services. Another is in-home family support. Supported living services are hourly or daily services in the person's own home, whether it be a group home situation or their own home. In-home family support is hourly or daily services in mom and dad's home when they're living with other people. You can have one of those 2 services, or you could have respite or homemaker. If you don't use in-home family support or in-home or supported living services, you must use respite or homemaker. So to be clear, it's not all 4 services, it's one of the 4 services. Hourly or daily, use monthly, ongoing, and a reasonable plan. Waiver waives the rules of people with disabilities living in an intermediate care facility for people with developmental disabilities. An intermediate care facility is a home that is required to have a nurse, required to have a dietitian, they're required to have fire drills monthly, in the middle of the night, during the daytime, different times. They're required to have certain kinds of food, 4 ounces of protein, a half a cup of vegetables, a half a cup of starch, and active treatment ongoing. That's why they're considered institutional, because of those rules. If I'm in an intermediate care facility and I'm asked to leave, or if I'm demitted, I lose my services because the services are tied to the building. Waiver waives the rules of medical assistance. It waives the rules of having to live in a place like an intermediate care facility. So you can live in your own home, you can live in mom and dad's home, you can rent an apartment, you can live with others and have housemates or roommates. You can live with significant others, or if you're homeless, services follow you wherever you are in the state of Minnesota. As long as you qualify for the waiver, you're screened and eligible, the services follow you as long as you are in the state of Minnesota. The budgets in the Developmental Disabilities Waiver are individualized. They're based on the needs of the person. If there were several people that have the DD waiver, each person would have a different budget. The budget is determined by the screening or the assessment, the Min Choices assessment. It's also determined based on an interview with the case manager and the family and the plan to determine the needs that are required. What is 245D? This is the law that governs the Developmental Disabilities Waiver. In the state of Minnesota, most of the services that are through the Developmental Disabilities Waiver are licensed services. That means in all parts of Minnesota, the services are implemented in the same manner. It provides requirements for the providers to meet regarding training and information they need to provide for their staff and how they implement the services. Through licensure, the goal is consistent programming overall. Providers need to be licensed and provide the service to bill for the service. 245D, also all direct care staff have to be fingerprinted and have to complete a criminal background check. All group homes, currently called community residential settings, have to be licensed under the law 245D for consistent programming and supports. Take a look at the services offered through the Developmental Disabilities Waiver. There are a number of services, more than 20 different services available through the waiver. This is the list. Starting at 24-hour emergency assistance, adult daycare, assistive technology. We'll be talking about consumer-directed community support near the end of the presentation because it's very different. Chore services, crisis services, day training and habilitation, employment development, exploration and support, environmental modifications, extended personal care attendant services, family training and counseling, home delivered meals, homemaking services, housing access coordination, in-home family support, live-in caregiver expenses, night supervision services, personal support, positive support services, remote support, respite in-home and out-of-home, specialist services, supported living services, transportation and transition services. We'll be discussing each of these services individually. 24-hour emergency assistance. For people who live in their own home, which is defined by the Department of Human Services as one person or up to two people who have a lease or control their home by owning it, and they have 24-hour on-site supervision, they can use the service 24-hour emergency assistance, which is a plan that people would check on them, or they could call on them if they needed something in case of an urgent situation. It could help with problem solving, an in-person response. The individualized plan is developed with a case manager. An example would be in Minnesota, it snows, so if I'm going to come home and I get stuck in the snow and I can't get home, but I know that my child will be home at 4 o'clock and I can't go home till 4:30, I may call the neighbor to come over and to maybe watch my child until I get home, or have the child go to their house for a while, and they could get paid to provide that care and support as an incidental situation or as a unique situation. Adult daycare and adult daycare bath. These are options for adults to offer meaningful activity during the day, which may include bathing or grooming options. Maybe at home they don't have an accessible bath, an accessible shower, and they can have their needs addressed at this adult daycare. It offers daytime activities for adults and meaningful support. Assistive technology. Assistive technology is meant to help a person access their home more independently. Technology for communication or speech is generally paid through medical assistance. So if I was working with a speech therapist and they needed help, an iPad for communication and software, that's generally paid through straight medical assistance. But if I needed assistive technology because I had limited executive functioning, I had some trouble remembering my appointments throughout the day or what I needed to do next, this technology is available to help people to address that. It needs to have a recommendation from a professional that is able to provide that recommendation because they have the appropriate education and training and experience. Chore services are heavy duty kinds of services, maybe carpet cleaning, lawn mowing, snow removal, windows. It's services to maintain the home of the person, to help clean or keep it sanitary and safe. Heavy duty kinds of cleaning. It's for people that aren't able to complete the task and a non-paid person isn't available. Maybe it's for a person living at home by themselves and they're getting home delivered meals, so their walk needs to be shoveled so the service can come to the door, or they need their lawn mowed so they don't get a ticket from the city. And there's not someone else naturally to provide that support and assistance. Crisis Respite is a unique service. The metro counties work together and they have a number of crisis homes available for a time limited period of 90 days or less. and up to 2 times annually. People can enroll in the crisis services, and they can be a part of these crisis homes. The staff are highly skilled and trained to provide supports and services to folks. It could be services that augment their current services. It could be staff that would mentor the current staff, or it could be assessments like a behavioral assessment or an environmental assessment to help and assist the person to address their challenging behavior or their situation. Crisis Respite provides behavioral assessments and programming, consultation, staff training, and technical assistance. Crisis Respite is often a very expensive service, sometimes $800 a day or more. Day training and habilitation. Day training and habilitation has evolved over the last 5 to 6 years. Previously, it was a vocational focused program, vocational focused service, but currently it's for folks that have graduated from high school. They focus on learning life skills, self-care, street safety, busing, communications, and other types of skills. The program doesn't currently focus on vocational services like they had in the past. There's some new services that we'll talk about in a minute that have replaced that function. These services, which were introduced in 2018, are separate from day training habilitation services. The new services are employment development, employment exploration, and employment support. Employment development is helping people find work, helping them to complete a resume and to find the job that they're looking for. Employment exploration is to help them determine what they're interested in, to help them document what their skills are, what their interests are, and explore the kinds of ideas of work they're looking for. And employment support is on-the-job support, formerly called job coaches, which could be one-to-one services or a range of 1 to 3 services throughout the day, individualized to meet the needs of the person. The person's case manager develops a schedule and indicates which of the services, development, exploration, or support the person is participating in on a regular basis. Environmental adaptations or environmental accessibility adaptations. Sometimes they are referred to as environmental modifications. These are physical and equipment adaptations for the person's home or their vehicle. Commonly, they could be a ramp to their house, grab bars in the bathroom, modifying a van by raising the roof or lowering the floor, adding a ramp, adding additional batteries because of the remote services that are run off the battery, modifying or adaptive steering columns or other equipment within the van. Environmental adaptations or modifications are required by the needs of the person and documented in the community services and support plan. We're allowed to spend up to $40,000 annually outside of the budget for developmental disabilities for these home modifications. And if you're using the service consumer directed community support, the first $5,000 comes from the budget, and then the additional $35,000 could come in addition from the county aggregate funding. These modifications to the home and vehicle enable the person to function with greater independence in their home, and they're of direct and specific benefit due to the person's disability. Extended personal care attendant services are services that are available to address an increased need because of an injury, an illness, or hospitalization. They can be addressed short term to address this specific situation, and they would be discontinued after a period of time when the person met their need or recovered. Family training and counseling is a relatively new service for the Developmental Disabilities Waiver. It includes training for the person receiving services on self-advocacy or self-determination, teaching them how to be a stronger member of their interdisciplinary team. It also includes paying for or providing person-centered thinking training or person-centered planning services from trained facilitators. Also, training for family who are acting as staff people to improve the provision of services and supports that they're delivering. Home delivered meals. If a person isn't able to cook or they don't have the skills to cook, um, one meal a day up to 7 meals per week can be offered to them. This could be Meals on Wheels, where a hot meal is delivered to their door, or they could be many of several programs that are cooked fresh and delivered once a week, or cooked and then frozen and delivered to be heated up at home. The meals are cost effective and they offer some flexibility. The agency that delivers the meals has to be licensed to provide this service. The meals must be nutritionally balanced. For folks that are 18 years old or older, when nobody is available to prepare the meal and the person isn't able to cook. Homemaking services addresses light duty services like cooking, shopping, cleaning, laundry, and household maintenance. It helps a person to maintain the home. A homemaker can also help with shopping, grocery shopping, meal preparation, um, housekeeping. A homemaker could displace the time that the primary caregiver is spending with the person so the person can spend more time with the person with a disability. And so the homemaker is doing the person's tasks. A homemaker could also teach and train the person with a disability how to make their bed or do their laundry or clean their room. The homemaking services address the primary living space, the bedroom, bathroom, living room, dining room, kitchen, um, and not generally other rooms. Homemakers must be contracted through a Hunter County provider of developmental disability services. Housing access coordination. Housing access coordination will be moving to medical assistance and being discontinued through the Developmental Disabilities Waiver July 2020. July 2020, a similar service will become a medical assistance funded service. So the service within the Developmental Disabilities Waiver will go away. But for now, it's a service that looks for generic non-licensed housing. I just need a new apartment. I need a new place to live. I need an accessible house. It helps them with problems around physical access, like I need an accessible house that has a ramp or an elevator. How to pay for housing. I need to learn about Minnesota Supplemental Aid and Minnesota Supplemental Aid housing assistance. How to provide information about assistance and keeping the house clean. Um, Fees are based on market prices that these agencies charge, but housing access coordination can be very helpful. In-home family support is one of the habilitative services that we talked about earlier. In-home family support is a package of service, including the staff, training for the staff, supervision of the staff, transportation, and some community activity if it's a part of a goal or an assessed need. It provides training and support to the person with a disability. It also helps the managing party to maybe write the plan for the year, to write goals and objectives, to attend quarterly or annual meetings and report on progress. It's designed to increase the family's ability to care and support for the person in the family home. Live-in caregiver expenses is an exciting service. It allows a lot of dynamic flexibility. The waiver pays an unrelated staff's rent and food, or their portion of their rent and food, and their hourly rate of pay. It pays for the staff portion of rent and food. The staff is considered a roommate. So they're also a staff, but for purposes of living caregiver, they're going to be the roommate. That means that we can't compel them to work. We can't tell them they must be here at 10 o'clock. If we did that, we'd have to pay them from 10 o'clock on because we compel them to work. So instead, we say things like, let us know if you're not available tonight so we can make an arrangement. And so the expectation is the roommate will be there most of the time, it's also a good idea to have something in writing so you kind of understand what the roles of the live-in caregiver are, what their expectations are. They are to be paid at least 1 hour a day and as many hours as the budget allows. You can certainly have other staff besides the live-in caregiver, but they have to be paid at least 1 hour a day or as many hours as you want within the budget. The live-in caregiver expenses are to be delivered in a person's home when they're living by themselves or with another person in a non-licensed facility. Live-in caregiver expenses is not for a licensed setting or a community residential setting. Night supervision is also a relatively new service for the Developmental Disabilities Waiver. It provides overnight assistance and monitoring by an awake staff in the person's own home. So that overnight situation where a person needs more care and assistance at night because maybe they walk around or they don't sleep well or they have some challenges with their behavior. This is delivered in a person's own home. It's not intended for a group home, community residential setting, but when the person's living by themselves or with a housemate and they have a lease or own the property. Personal support has evolved in the last several years, but personal support is a licensed service. It's for support and supervision at home and in the community. Imagine you wanted to go to a baseball game, but the person couldn't get to the baseball game by themselves. So the staff that helped them to get to the baseball game drove them there, helped them get their ticket, helped them find their seat in the big um, baseball diamond, was paid through personal support. They're providing support and supervision in the community, making sure that they're safe, making sure that they get home okay. In one situation at the Mall of America, a provider was teaching a group of people with disabilities how to use a photo kiosk booth. The first couple of months, they used supported employment to teach and train them, and the rate for supported employment was a little higher. And after a period of time, the people that were involved with them learned all the skills. They knew how to open the photo kiosk, they knew how to use the equipment. And so the services were changed to personal assistance because the staff didn't need to teach or train anymore. They just needed to provide supervision and support for them. Personal support, a little bit more information about it is that it's set up as an individual rate for each person through the rates management system. It is a licensed service, so staff have to be trained at least 30 hours before they begin working with a person. Parents of adults can sometimes be paid to provide care for their adult child through personal support. Not all providers allow this, but some providers do. And it can be used flexibly to develop alternative programs in different situations. Personal support is support and supervision at home and in the community. It's a service that now does provide mileage reimbursement, and it requires training. A few things that personal support is not. It's not a medical service or a service that requires medical training or additional training in order to complete the task. It's not a service that provides community programming as a part of the rate, and it's not a habilitative service. Positive support services formerly have been referred to as behavioral supports. These are services that consist of behavioral supports, developing and implementing and monitoring a person-centered, individually designed, proactive plan to address challenging behavior. So they are incentives sometimes or plans that address challenging behavior. Remote support. This is another relatively new service through the Developmental Disabilities Waiver. It's a real-time two-way communication between the provider and the person. It could be assistive technology, something you wear on your wristband, something you wear as a pennant, or it could be a phone call. Respite services. Respite services can be daily or hourly. They can be in-home services or out-of-home services. If they're out-of-home services, generally it's in a licensed setting of 4 persons or less. It is a break for the primary caregiver. It is a licensed service, and the agency sets the rate of care for the licensed service. Staff still need to have a background check and be fingerprinted and have to be licensed. Specialist services. Specialist services, or a specialist, is a person that has advanced training, a specific education degree to address a specific need. They may be used to implement person-centered plans. This is a new use, so someone develops a person-centered plan, but sometimes there's not people that are going to implement the plan. And so a specialist can be used to actually implement and make complete the plan and meet the goals and objectives within the person-centered plan. The specialist is licensed as a 245D provider. As a reminder, the Developmental Disabilities Waiver is licensed under 245D, and a specialist is also licensed under 245D and needs to be a provider under that rule. Some of the things they can provide are assessments, program development, evaluation, and monitoring specific to outcomes identified in the person's support plan and related to one or more of the eligibility areas or the assessed needs. In-home family support and supported living services. We mentioned in-home family support before. They are very similar services. The difference is in-home family support is in mom and dad's home when the person is living with mom and dad. Supported living services is in the person's home when they're living in their own home or a group home. Could be a licensed setting. It's a package of service, a daily or an hourly rate that includes the staff training, the supervision of the staff, transportation, and some community activity. Case management. In order to have any waiver, case management is required. The case manager does a number of things. They will meet with you at least 2 times per year. They will talk about your preferences for services. They will develop the community services and support plan. They will help you to develop and implement goals and objectives. They will make sure that a service authorization is generated. They'll provide you information about services. You can call and email the case manager as many times as you need to have your questions answered about county services or the Developmental Disabilities Waiver. Transition services are services that can help a person move from a licensed setting. Say you're living in a nursing home and you had to sell all of your possessions to spend down to a level to be on medical assistance, and you've been in the nursing home for quite some time, but all of a sudden you get better and you're wanting to move out. But you have no assets because you spent those down. You need help with furniture, essential furniture, deposits, household supplies, moving expenses, utility setup fees, deposits, and window coverings. Transition services can help you with the moving expenses and those other items to move from a licensed setting, an intermediate care facility, community residential setting, a nursing home, or even from your own home to another home. They can spend up to $3,000 per transition, up to every 3 years. Transportation for many of the services we talked about so far is included within the rate. If I have in-home family support, if I have supported living services, the mileage for the staff is already included within the rate. It's important to note that the waiver does not pay for medical transportation or transportation to the school. School provides free and appropriate education, and transportation is included in those rates. And medical transportation to go to the doctor, the dentist, the speech therapist, occupational therapist is paid through medical assistance. If you have medical assistance, there's a program called Minnesota Non-Emergency Transportation, or MNET, M-N-E-T. The phone number is listed here, 866-46 877-887-1724. You can call them and ask them for a mileage reimbursement sheet and get authorization for transportation from your house to the doctor, the dentist, the chiropractor. Some transportation not covered through hourly rates, not including school or medical, can be paid per trip or per mile within the budget. We saved consumer-directed community support as a service until the end because it's a very different service. So far, all the services we talked about so far are licensed traditional services where the agency hires a staff, trains a staff, and supervises a staff and sets the rate of pay within a range. Consumer-directed community support was initiated in Hennepin County in about 1998, and it was modified in 2001. It's a non-licensed flexible service that can be provided across all waivers in Minnesota, including the alternative care program. So there's a number of different kinds of waivers besides the developmental disabilities waiver. There's a waiver for people with nursing home level of care, hospital level of care, people with brain injuries, and waivers for those that are elderly over age 65. It's a new way of thinking about service delivery where the person receiving services can be the employer. They work with a provider called the Financial Management Service that's more or less like a bank that pays for the services and bills medical assistance. They're tailored, the services are tailored individually to meet the needs of the person within a budget. And the county approves the plan and provides the information. When I talk about consumer-directed community support, I try and explain them by talking about a grocery store and a restaurant. I ask people, where's your favorite restaurant? Sometimes they say Perkins. I say, well, what do you get at Perkins? And they say, well, we get pancakes and omelets and muffins and cookies. Then I say, when you go to Perkins, do you walk right in the kitchen and start cooking? And they laugh and they say, well, of course not. I get thrown out. That's not why I go to Perkins. I don't go to there to work. I go there to sit down and have a nice meal with family and have wait service, etc. So Perkins is kind of like the traditional licensed services we've been talking about. In the state of Minnesota, all these developmental disabilities waiver providers are licensed under the Rule 245D, and they set the rate, they write the plan, they train the staff, they hire the staff, they help develop the health and safety plan, and we can only use traditional licensed services for those services. The county approves the plan. With consumer-directed community support, it's kind of like if you went to Perkins, you would go in the kitchen and you would start cooking. It's consumer-directed. Or maybe you go to the grocery store and you pick things off the shelf that meet the needs of the person, that address the barriers a person's needs present, that are cost-effective. And so in that case, you as a managing party or you as a person using consumer-directed community support, set the rate of pay for your staff from a range of $13.25 currently to a little less than $18 an hour for most people. You write the plan, you train the staff, you hire the staff, you develop the health and safety plan. You select generic community supports, or you could use any of the traditional license services that we talked about, but these traditional license services have to be implemented the same way they were if you're using them under consumer-directed community support. The county approves the plan. Some examples of services only available through consumer-directed community support are parents as staff providing care and support for their child less than 18, or a husband or a wife providing care and support for their husband or a wife with a disability. We can pay for prescribed special diet. How many people have been asked by a friend to please buy them a loaf of gluten-free bread in the grocery store? You go to the store and you pick up this small loaf that's $7 and you're kind of surprised that it costs so much for a little loaf. So the prescribed special diet offers an amount of money to compensate for the additional cost of the bread. We have gluten-free, casein-free, ketogenic, hypoglycemic, controlled protein, low cholesterol, several diets that are authorized through the state of Minnesota, and several, each diet is paired with a percentage that we would reimburse. Behavioral supports are listed. I like to talk about a young man in Hennepin County that has autism, and he has trouble bonding with his new staff. And he gets a new staff and he says, "I'm not working with you." And he folds his arms and he's in the corner and he's kind of looking down. And his mom will say, "Well, he's going to go get his car washed." And then the person with a disability will say, "Really? He's really what? He's going to get his car washed? Okay, well, I'll go along." Because he loves car washes. He loves the brushes, the lights, the wax colors, the noise, the smells, whatever. And after that, he and his staff are best friends. The behavioral support of a car wash, which costs $6, is kind of a low cost to help bonding staff. Through consumer-directed community support, we also have augmentative therapies. Augmentative therapies are music therapy, horseback riding therapy called hippotherapy, art therapy, massage therapy, or other non-experimental therapies. If there's an asterisk after the service listed, we're required to have a prescription from a doctor currently enrolled in the state medical assistance plan, or a document called the alternative treatment form, which indicates that the service is not experimental. That's an overview of some of the services through the Developmental Disabilities Waiver. Remember, it's habilitative to teach, train, educate, mentor, challenge a person to be as independent as possible, which is different than some of the other waivers that are medically necessary. We can talk about more of those in some other trainings. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or call me directly. Thanks so much.